For the latest in strategic affairs, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the bell icon for updates. This is StratNewsGlobal. I'm Amitabh. Revi. On the talking point today, we have Ambassador Navtej Sarna, India's former ambassador to Israel. He's also been our envoy to the UK and the US. And joining us from Tel Aviv is Anat Bernstein-Reich. She's the CEO, BDO of the Israel-India Investment Banking and chair of the Israel-India Chamber of Commerce. Ambassador Navtej Sarna, good to see you again after a while, sir, and good to pin you down even though you're up in the hills.
Pleasure. Thank you, Amitabh.
Pleasure's all ours. And as I said, from joining us from Tel Aviv for the first time on our platform, but is a well-known face in India, is Anat Bernstein-Reich. Ms. Reich, thank you so much for giving us time.
Good evening, good afternoon here. Thank you for having me.
Good afternoon to you. Total pleasure. Ambassador, since the defense minister has just left and he's had various meetings, I wanted to start off with India and Israel's focus on deepening military cooperation, especially what India wants, which is research and development and future technologies and maybe even co-production of weapons and system. Your comments on that pillar of the relationship, Ambassador?
Well, I think that's been one of the strongest pillars of the relationship, the military-security partnership, which we've had now for the last 30 years. And in fact, even some would say that, you could see the beginnings of this even before the setting up of diplomatic relations. And that has been moving very well. Israel has become one of the strongest partners, and India is, at least the last figures I saw, India was the largest customer for Israel in defense. So this meets the twin imperatives of India wanting to modernize its military establishment and Israel wanting to commercialize its defense capabilities. Also, Israel, from what reads about the visit and earlier visits which have discussed security and military issues, that Israel is willing to move more into co-production, to move more into R&D, and also it meets the concerns that both countries have regarding border safety, border security, cross-border terrorism, and so on. And therefore, I think this is a pillar which is now set to move further, and it seems to be almost on, on an upward graph consistently. And this visit and the statements that have been made to work further on co-production, to work on futuristic technologies, I think bodes well for the partnership.
Sure. Right. This visit was, again, it was postponed for a couple of hours, so the second time because of political issues in the Knesset. But it comes in the backdrop of Russia's invasion of Ukraine and India's overwhelming dependence on ex-Soviet or Russian weaponry. We just saw, I think, in April, the Iron Beam being publicized, showing Israel's technological prowess. If you want to give us your thoughts on the defense relationship first.
I think that the defense relations correlate well also with our economic relations and our strategic relations. This is just one very important component, but brings both parties to the table. And from the defense relation, I think that rest of the relations grows, whether it's economical and strategic, as I mentioned. I think that the war now in Russia will even strengthen the relations because Israel is a stable supplier of defense needs that India needs for its borders and fight in terrorism. And I'm really happy that Minister Gantz managed to come to India for this long-awaited trip and visit and meet with Mr. Modi, because defense I mean, as Mr. Sarna said rightly, it's also a commercial issue, and India is the most important today defense client of Israel, and we of course want it to continue. And those kind of visits and those are kind of personal relations, as you see now in the picture, and also the meeting with Mr. Modi and Mr. Gantz, are very important to continue our growing relations. And this talk is in the 30th years of our diplomatic relations. So this visit, and hopefully Mr. Bennett visit soon, will bring our relations from strength to strength, and to even tripling our trade, which is now only 5-6 billion, and that's not enough.
Sure. I just want to play out an excerpt of an interview that our founder and editor-in-chief, Nitin Gokhale, did with the Israeli ambassador here. That was slightly before the defense minister's visit, but this is an excerpt on the leg that we are talking about of relationships, that is the defense leg. This is an excerpt from that interview.
I believe that the trust will build the bridges of how do we do the Make in India in a way that serves India's interest and serves Israel's interest. So the companies are, for the last couple of years, I think, are giving a lot of the Israeli defense but also the establishment of how do we work into the Indian, Make in India, and we understand the need. You know, if you look at the war in Ukraine here, and the problem now of spare parts for India, for Russian equipment and things like that, you can understand the logic and the need in general, not only of spare parts, but autonomy and self-reliance, since India is growing very fast to be a world superpower, not just a regional superpower that it has been for many, many years. I think it's a natural process that is going through, and anyone who wants to be part of the process, and I think Israel has to be part of the process, will have to find the ways to adjust and play along.
Ambassador Sarna, you talked about co-production, co-research, and even maybe at some point of time exports to a third country. Is Israel different in terms of the flexibility it gives to India on technology transfer?
Well, I think that's been our experience so far. I would say that Israel has been easier than many other partners to access technology, to a willingness to share technologies. They have been broadly, if I may say so, the no questions asked partner that India needs. And that is why the relationship has grown. Besides that, Israel's technology is really top class in these matters and in other matters, and particularly in defense and security. There's the cutting edge technologies. So to have that technology and to have a partner who is willing to share it with you without too many strings attached, I think is a plus for us. Added to that is the fact that it's quite clear after Ukraine, if it wasn't clear earlier, that we do need to diversify our sources. And the Russian component has been coming down from the 70% to about 58-59% today. And I think that's going to be the direction, particularly after Ukraine. So all that does fit in to our plans to diversify.
Ms. Reich, if you want to talk about, like the master mentioned, I was seeing figures for, I think they were 2020, which show that 43% of defense exports are to the Asia-Pacific region. I don't know how much is for India, though I do remember something in the region of 40. But is Make in India for the world something that sits well in Israel?
I would say that it's not. I would prefer to call it Make with Israel, and not Make in India or Make with India. And our former President Rivlin, during his visit, stressed it again and again. We need to keep manufacturing here. We need to keep some know-how here. And the request to Make in India is not an easy request for Israeli companies. They understand India's need to create a self-reliant, to create manufacturing capabilities. But I think that it's a bit too much to request make in India. There should be some scheme that we do it together, whether it's an R&D and whether it's manufacturing, and allow Israel to keep manufacturing, because if we don't have the make in Israel part, there will not be make in India. So I think that India needs to be a bit more flexible towards this demand from Israel.
Sure. Ambassador, 30 years, as you mentioned, much has changed, not just in India and Israel, but around the world. Now, no longer are eyebrows really raised when it comes to Israel in India, unlike our neighbor, no matter who is in power. Ambassador?
Yes, that's true, because I think today we have the relationship has been completely normalized. And you see, it's followed a kind of natural progression in the last, I would say in the last 70 years, not just the 30 years. You had a time when you had recognition without diplomatic relations. It took us another 42 years to establish diplomatic relations. And then you had, very quiet diplomatic relations for a few years. We were working together in some areas. We were working together in agriculture, in science and technology, and so on and so forth. And then what was missing really was high-level political contact. And then in the last few years, you see that has been happening. So today it's a full-fledged strategic partnership where there are frequent visits, and they're like any relations with it, diplomatic relations with any other country. And I think that's part of the changing landscape of not just India-Israel relations, but of the broader geopolitics of the world, the geopolitics of West Asia. I mean, Israel has normalized its relations with several other countries, for instance, the UAE and Morocco, and so on. So I think today no eyebrows are raised when you have any visit or any progress in the relationship, and I think that's a healthy trend.
Mr. Reich, there was a chemistry between Prime Minister Netanyahu and Prime Minister Modi. Prime Minister Bennett and him have met once, I think on the sidelines of some
Glasgow
event. Correct. The April visit that was supposed to happen was postponed. But does it really matter who's in power or how delicate the government's minority is in Israel? Majority, I beg your pardon.
I think that by now it doesn't matter who is in power. Of course, that the good relations between Mr. Modi and former Prime Minister Netanyahu contributed immensely to the growing relations. I need to give them the credit for that. But you can see the very warm meeting between Prime Minister Bennett and Prime Minister Modi in Glasgow, and the visit of Dr. Jay Shankar here in October. So I think that it's beyond who is in the leadership. By now, it's friendship between our two nations that I truly hope that it will continue no matter who is holding the reins, whether in Israel or in India.
True. Ambassador, you touched upon it, security, terror, border issues. Both countries have similar problems, and India can learn a lot from Israel.
Yes, I think that is true, and it's more a sharing of technologies, sharing of experiences that's happened. Particularly in India faces the problem of terrorism, and that we have seen the kind of support and cooperation, particularly since the Mumbai attacks of 2008, in which both Israel and India had become targets of terrorism in Mumbai, and the cooperation that followed. I think that was the most dramatic moment in bilateral cooperation in this field that we have seen. So yes, that is certainly one of the areas. But let me broaden this, Amitabh, if you have a minute.
Sure.
Is because we have to. This relationship is much beyond defense and security also. It started with agriculture. It's still very important, agriculture. It's water management is extremely important. And then there is this entire area of innovation, on which we are currently very keen to make that the anchor of the relationship, actually, because both countries are very innovative. I mean, if Israel is called the startup nation of the world, India also has got the third largest startup infrastructure today. And there is much to learn from each other here. So innovation is going to be very important. A lot of money is being put into this. And now we have a direct flight from Delhi to Tel Aviv. If possibly in the future, you might have direct flights from Tel Aviv to Bangalore, Tel Aviv to Mumbai. And I think that will help this area of cooperation a lot. The other aspect is the people-to-people relationship, the tourism, the culture that links the two peoples. You'd be amazed at the kind of bonding that creates between India and Israel. Virtually every person from Israel, or every family from Israel, has somebody who is in India at that moment, or has been to India, or is planning to go to India, and that has sort of broadened this relationship a lot. So while the world may see this as essentially a military security relationship, what I want to say is, from my personal experience of having lived in Israel for almost 4 years as the ambassador, I think there are several other areas on which there is tremendous cooperation.
Let me move straight into one of those areas and ask Ms. Reich for her thoughts. A lot of talk about negotiations on an FTA with Israel. Just a couple of days back, Israel has signed an FTA with the UAE. The UAE and India have FTA as well, CEPA. There is what is called here in India West Asian Quad with the UAE, Israel, and the US. Your thoughts on the synergies there in economics and trade, Ms. Reich?
Yes. I must tell you a joke before that.
Sure.
Mr. Sarna spoke about Mr. Gantz coming to India, and the joke that runs here in the social media that every Israeli, after discharging from the army, having his backpack trip to India. And as you know, Mr. Gantz was the chief of staff till not long back. So the joke here is that this is his after army backpacking to India. So that's on a humoristic side. You were talking about innovation, and I'd like to point our audience to the I4F program that started during Modi and Netanyahu meeting. And this is a joint fund between the Israeli Innovation Authority and GITA of CII that sponsors joint collaborations. And this is a fund that is important to be aware of, because both countries or both governments are giving funding to work together, to do R&D together, and much more, and adapt Israeli technologies to India and vice versa. So with the government help, I think that the innovation collaboration, and Ambassador Sarna rightly said that India is becoming challenging Israel for being a startup nation, because we enjoyed this title for a while. And I'm visiting India often, and I see amazing startups that definitely challenge. Oh, in the picture, you can see an agreement we signed with the Gujarat Chamber of Commerce just a while back, and we are expecting them to visit us very soon. So more and more joint R&D, joint collaboration, and joint innovation, which will connect to what we spoke about defense. Our relations is way beyond defense. It's now in the R&D and innovation. And I hope soon more and more of those will be in the public. Just last week, if we speak about innovation, Finergy battery, Finergy aluminum air battery drove in the roads of Chennai for 400 kilometers in the Mahindra Trio car. So this is a great collaboration between the Israeli Finergy company and Mahindra electric car. Let's take Zuz Power, energy storage that is now aligning with an Indian partner, and soon you will have those swift charging for the electric vehicle in India. And more, I can definitely mention a lot of collaborations that are happening or in the make. And we will have more to talk, I guess, in your next program.
Wow, but the EV, if you're talking about that technology, the one I drive gives me half of what you are mentioning. So that's pretty cool. But just coming back to FTA trade ambassador, there's a question here from Shivam Narayan. Of course, he's thanking both of our guests for sessions like this, but he's asking about the real relevance of the West Asian Quad.
Well, I think that's a grouping which is in its early days, I would say. They've had a meeting at the foreign minister level, and I think they're still trying to see the agenda of moving forward. It's an interesting grouping given the fact that it's been enabled by the overall improvement in several relationships, the India-US relationship, the India-Israel relationship, and the Israel-UAE relationship most important. So that grouping, call it Quad if you like, will no doubt move forward, but it'll probably move forward on issues like infrastructure, on energy, for instance, clean energy, on food security issues. From what I understand, Indian proposals are likely to be on these issues. So let's see how it moves forward. It's early days at the moment. It's enabled by the fact that every country that's part of it has something to bring to the table. The UAE, for instance, has a huge investment fund marked out for India, about $75 billion, out of which only about $30-odd billion have been used. So, that investment with Israeli technology and Israeli entrepreneurship can find the Indian market, for instance, and work together. At the same time, we have a huge stake in West Asia, given the fact that we have 8 or 9 million people of Indian origin working there. We have our energy needs. So this gives us a greater play in the area, particularly at a time when the US is perceived as withdrawing in many ways from the area. So it's an interesting grouping, as I said, and let's see how they get down to real projects in the coming weeks and months.
Mr. Reich, you're talking about people to people and cultural contacts. There's this question from one of our viewers, if you could clarify it. It says, I don't think, this is from Matara, I don't think the relationship is normalized if Israel does not allow places of worship for Hindus and does not even recognize Hinduism as an official religion of Israel.
That's a tough question, because I don't think that Israel as a government, and I'm not a government official,
Sure.
is very pro-India and Hinduism, and I'm not aware of any problem that occurred in the past. And I think that this is a misconception, and I'll be happy to clarify in some my social media to this lady, or I don't know who addressed this question. Not a problem at all. And Israel loves Judaism. Israel is not just about Judaism. We are the center for Christianity and Islam, and we welcome other religions. And I really don't know why this is a thought that this lady or man had.
Sure. Ambassador Kedar Bhide says, when you say Israel is a no questions asked partner, may I ask, how do you visualize negotiations for TOT unfolding in case of artificial intelligence and cybersecurity?
Well, I think that's a very broad question again. And when I say no questions asked, partner, I meant in a particular situation in terms of crises when we've had the need for arms to be brought in, spares to be given to us at very critical times. For instance, during Kargil, Israel has not been found wanting. Let me say that's what I meant. But in terms of every particular project, every new technology, naturally these things are negotiated between the two governments. They are negotiated by professionals and experts, and a middle ground is found as to what can be done in each particular case. So you can't really generalize on this. But what is important is the political will with which you bring to these negotiations. If you bring a positive mindset, if you bring the necessary political will, then obviously the middle ground that you find is more satisfying to both sides. If you come with a closed mind, then or there's lack of trust, or there's lack of confidence about how safe the technology will be with your partner, what use it will be put, and so on and so forth. Then of course your transfer of technology becomes more difficult. So what I'm saying is that we have today a tremendous amount of confidence in each other. There is a very positive outlook towards each other, and all this is being reflected, whether you see it in trade, you see it in defense, you see it in tourism, and you will see it in the other areas that have been mentioned.
Mr. Reich, in response to one of your comments, earlier answers, Kedar again asks, what are the possibilities of increasing manufacturing beyond Israel, especially for innovations in e-vehicles and non-conventional energy in India?
So this is one of the hottest topics at the moment. And since I would say October, when life are back to normal, I see many Indian manufacturing companies coming to Israel and looking to take Israeli technologies and manufacture it in India. And Israelis actually need to manufacture in India. Israel is not a manufacturing base. We can manufacture, let's say, 20% of the product, but India is the place to manufacture in quality and in scale, and of course in affordable prices, and Israelis understand it. And in order to be competitive, not just in India, but also in Europe and US, we need to do a large portion of our manufacturing in India. And of course, it relates to electric vehicle, it relates to energy, renewable energy. Israelis understand that we are not a manufacturing. We need to manufacture something here, of course, but definitely India is the place that we will go if we want to manufacture. The mindset after COVID and after the conflict between, while the conflict between US and China, is that India is the alternative to manufacturing in China. And many Israelis you'll see on the flights now are coming to India to evaluate those opportunities and look for partners and manufacturing partners.
That sounds super. Ambassador, another one from Varun says Iran is a key player in West Asia. India has interests in the region. We know about Iran and Israel. How does all of that sit in our relationship?
Well, we have we've had good relations with Israel, despite the fact that we have a good relationship with Iran, and none of this is a secret to either partner. So Israel knows why we need to have a good relationship with Iran, whether it's our energy needs, it's our old linkages, and similarly. Iran knows that India has developed a relationship with Israel. Similarly, it's our India and United States relationship, despite the fact that US and Iran have issues. Now, this is part of the development of relations that you understand. You understand why a country may have relations with which you don't have good relations. And yet you continue to improve the relationship with that first country. And that's I think the more important the India-Israel relationship becomes, the more this understanding will grow. So I think this is recognizing the fact that your partner needs to have other relationships and why. And I think we manage this. I wouldn't even call it a dilemma, as is being mentioned. I think this is part of the geopolitics and the handling of geopolitics that diplomats and leaders are supposed to do.
Sure. Ms. Reich, we've talked about a lot of areas of cooperation, but there are many more in which you are also involved in. If you could give us a brief outline in terms of agriculture, water, drip irrigation, I think even telecom.
So we are saying that the trend now is from mobile to mobility. So for years, the trade relations was about the telecom and the boom that India had in the mobile space. Now it's about mobility, as I mentioned, the EV, autonomous cars, storage, renewable, etc. If we're looking at health, I think that COVID brought us together to innovate together. I just been last week in India with a company called Medix, that its mission is to democratize the health system and work with partners in India. And this is very encouraging. If we're looking at water, a company like Ndrip is bringing new drip irrigation systems to India and working in the fields of Punjab presently. And of course, we have Netafim, which is a main player in the irrigation space in India, in India, and also Jain Irrigation that has 100% of Nandan irrigation. So all those Israeli companies are very active in India and make sure that every drop counts, as Mr. Modi used to say. I think that also food tech, as Ambassador Sarna mentioned, Israel is very active in the food tech space. I mean, there is milkless milk and meatless meat and eggless egg and fishless fish. And I think that to India, with the food security issues, there will be, and I know that there are starting collaborations in the food space, and especially when India is a vegetarian, many vegetarians, they will appreciate the meatless meat that is developed in Israel and the other protein-based solutions that are developed here. And right now we're seeing one of the centers of excellence that are built in collaboration between Israel and India to showcase Israeli technologies and best practices. And every month, I think that new centers of excellence are being built. And this is, of course, very encouraging because we do it totally together.
Ms. Anat Bernstein-Reich, absolutely appreciate your time and your experience. There's lots more to talk about, but maybe we can leave that for when the Prime Minister visits. Thank you for your time, ma'am.
Inshallah.
Inshallah. And Ambassador, always a pleasure. Thank you, sir, for your experience and your expertise.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thanks to all our viewers who I can see are having a raucous debate on some issues that were raised there that Anat also answered, but not satisfactory to that viewer. But anyway, just a reminder that you can support us and just putting up a UPI payment ID that you can help support the StratNewsGlobal in all the work we do. There is, of course, a link in the YouTube descriptor. And as soon as this stream ends, YouTube has a new feature called Super Thanks. That'll be the heart-shaped icon right next to the thumbs up you give this video. So if you're so inclined, you can do that as well. This is Talking Point on StratNewsGlobal. I'm Amitabh Revi.